Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of Voice AI podcast where we discuss the future of voice AI. Today I'm very excited to host Francisco Izaguirre, who is engineering leader at 11x, working on voice agents. Welcome, Francisco.
David, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have an amazing technical discussion today. But before that, let me give an overview of 11x. So 11x is an SF-based AI startup that builds autonomous digital workers to automate sales, marketing, and GTM workflows. Founded in 2022, it offers AI agents like Alice, AI SDR, and Jordan, AI phone agent. The company has raised over 70 million so far and is one of the most interesting companies out there for AI agents. So yeah, I mean, and we're going to talk about the phone agent in particular, right? Was that overview correct? Was ChatGPT correct?
Yeah, that was a pretty good overview.
Cool, very cool. Well, Francisco, like, let us know, like, which part of the which product are you working on? What's your responsibility these
Yeah.
days?
So when I first started, I started off on the Alice side, and then a month in, our CTO was just expanding the division a little bit more on the voice side and asked me if I wanted to join, and it has just been insane since. So strictly work on the voice side, specifically on Julian, and we are now at a point where like any hyper growth startup, we're encountering certain technical challenges and scale issues that one, it's a pleasure to have scaling problems. Another, it's a damn hard thing to have scaling problems. And that's essentially where we're at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good problem to have anyway. I mean, it's easy for me to say you're doing the all the stress. You're having all the stress, but usually that's what the startup life is, right? You want growth. Absolutely. That's cool, Francisco. Let's talk about like what challenges voice specific. Like this is we are mostly interested in voice, right? That you guys are having. Or actually, I'm sorry. Like before you dig into that, can you describe what the product does? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
the phone agent.
what Julian does is essentially live phone calls that move revenue. So that could be speed to lead cases, outbound lead qualifications, demo bookings, some inbound call triaging, anything uh, that helps move the revenue needle up is essentially what
Okay.
we focus on. And in the
So they're
industries, we try to. Oh, sorry, I was going to say the industries that we love is enterprise is kind of like our bread and butter, and so that's the where we deliver value.
all right. So enterprises buy your product, and for the cases where they would use humans today to make, let's say, outbound calls, they use Julian, uh, and they give like a list of numbers, I guess, or it does it by itself, like figures out who to call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's we essentially give Julian all the tools it needs to be able to one ingest contact information, figure out what's the right phone sequence to contact them at, and also ensure that we are giving all that data post call back to the customer so that they can also be able to take action if needed.
Mm.
So we work with like a big set of vendors. As you know, the integrations game can be quite daunting and quite large, and there's a humongous footprint there. And the vendors that we've been working with so far have been incredible at helping us just identify new areas of opportunity, moving fast with us to be able to validate, and then actually get some more agents in production for them.
Yeah. So I imagine, I don't know, like, so who is the user of the agent? Is it like, I don't know, RevOps or
Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah?
internally it's for the customers their RevOps and their SDR managers. Um, Basically anyone that owns like the quota and responsible for that. And then externally, as you know, might be like a prospect on the phone. It's usually, I think in our case, it's usually like a small business or a GM who just needs an answer or a follow up quickly.
Okay. So the process of it is like, I don't know, I give some system prompt. There is a system prompt, and I your tool, I'm sure, allows me to prompt it, and then like dynamically it creates the prompt that is specific for this customer, and then the voice experience starts after that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's
So
a yeah.
the thing that I have found really interesting from joining just voice in general is, you hear the term agentic quite a bit. When I break that down, I feel like there's nothing more agentic than a phone call. It's a set of rules or behavior on how to manage a conversation, and then you give full autonomy, full agency to the agent to be able to run and make decisions on the fly. You can only steer, but you can't really direct. And so that to me, I just feel like there's nothing more agentic than that. And so for us, what that means, like technically, it's making sure that you mentioned the system prompt is like, how do we one structure this in a way that it's not going to blow up the context. We're able to be responsive as well, as in like our time to first byte is relatively low, so the agent responds relatively quickly. The user is not going to experience any type of awkward latency that prompts them to now have to respond and accidentally talk over the agent. And so uh, under the hood, it's really interesting just bringing down latency as much as possible and understanding like actually now that we have a baseline and an understanding of what we think is good latency, what do we actually need to do to actually have a good conversation? And then that prompts the question, well, what is a good conversation? And that's essentially where I feel like a lot of these companies are at right now. And we're trying to figure out exactly the answers to that in a more technical fashion.
Yeah, very interesting. Francisco, like, so based on your experience, what is a good latency for for a phone agent?
Yeah, the sweet latency that we have found is somewhere around 300, under 300 milliseconds, which is kind of absurd if you think about how even just a decade ago we figured out, 250 milliseconds on a just response time in the screen is what feels instant. And so to have to now have the audio pipeline, the streams and pipes and everything connected to be able to deliver such low latency, it's a challenge around availability of hardware, and then also making sure that we're using the proper edge locations to be able to have the shortest round trip from the end user to Julian.
And do you guys get to that latency? It's pretty impressive, actually.
We get relatively close in our P50. P90, there's just obviously a whole plethora of latencies that we start to experience. But ultimately, with some of the vendors and when I say vendors, I mean we have experimented with, at this point, like 100+ vendors to find what can actually work for us. And I'm proud to say that we are at a point where latency is feels like it's a solved problem, and now we're kind of climbing up Maslow's hierarchy of scaling challenges at this point. And now the next question is, now that we figured out reasonably well what is good latency for us, how do we now address the other customer concerns that we're starting to see that have moved away from just the agent taking too long to respond?
Yeah, but just to be sure, like the latency you're talking about like includes everything, right? From network latency to speech to text to LLM, like RAG, and then text to speech, and then back, latency. So
Yeah,
everything together.
yeah. The part that I think is a huge asterisk for us is the RAG component. That is something that I think we still have a bit to do, because I do think that traditional RAG just does not work well in phone conversations. I think the latency, there's more masking that needs to get done in the conversation. Typically, when you call someone and you say, can you give me more information on something, they'll typically look it up, right? They'll say, yeah, just give me a second, and then respond. And to me, that's what I would call like masking to buy time and hide the latency. And I think right now we either do that with the RAG system, but the reality is everyone's trying to figure out, well, how do we actually get that just as short as possible? And for us, we're trying to figure out, well, how do we actually give it as much context as possible? However, make sure that we're not going to be uh, bogged by the latency of trying to fetch something across the wire. And then the other components we've seen that have been really interesting in terms of latency is, never thought I would be thinking of Twilio, for instance, or um, any other provider, any telephony provider, in terms of, hey, this is actually relatively slow now that we're talking in tens of milliseconds. And that has been a really interesting learning for us as well.
Mm. So Twilio is slow for that use
We're
case.
finding
Eh,
that Twilio might not be the best solution for us,
yeah,
potentially.
yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. So let's put latency aside. Like just from like let's go over every component, right? And I've been hearing that ASR, so speech to text, is the biggest like lagging uh, technology when it comes to the stability and reliability of the conversations, right? Especially in form of like doing like numbers, transcribing numbers, emails, things that are I don't know if they're very important in your use case, but I imagine they should be, right? Is that the experience you guys are getting, or not really?
Yeah, we actually I feel like had like 2x latency when we had that in our pipeline. We've experimented a lot with the voice to voice models, which it feels like they're just not there yet. They're just strictly just not there yet, and I have no doubt that we will get there. The question is a matter of when. Um, but even before we get there, there's the step of which other two components can we actually combine. And what we have found is um, working with working with a stack that takes the audio itself and creates embeddings from that between like what we're calling the this like projection layer and then the llama models or any other open source models we've experimented with. I can go into detail in a bit into which models we think work really well for us for certain tasks, but having that piece just like all in one has been really nice in terms of latency, and in terms of actually getting the understanding of text, the someone's reading out their email in a different accent, like that is still a hard issue, a hard challenge for us to solve reliably.
Mm. So you mean combining ASR with LLM, right? Like
Hmm.
something like Ultravox is doing.
Yeah,
It's not like an end to end because it doesn't do the TTS,
correct.
but the first two part. Okay. That's very cool. Um, okay, and as you go through this stack, I mean, TTS is probably more or less solved, although I keep hearing that it has pronunciation problems as well. Uh, is that, do you agree with it's less of a problem in the stack, or not really?
Yeah, when I think about the pronunciation problem, I break it down to a couple of things. Like one, there's an accent component. Two, there's actually just pronouncing the thing correctly. So if I give it the right text, will it just pronounce it the same each time? And that's been I'll dive into those learnings. And ultimately, I think we still experience certain challenges, even with whether we're using like let's say it's 11 Labs or Cartesia using their I believe the format is called like IPA or whatever other phonetic language. That has been actually a really nice touch and to deliver, helping like customers feel valued and properly pronouncing their name or properly pronouncing their company name, the thing they love the absolute most, right? I forgot where I read this, but I think it was in How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's the sound of your name is the most beautiful sound in the world. And so for us, we thought like, well, damn, that's really important for us to get right because otherwise it's going to be really hard for us to connect with the end user if we can't pronounce their name correctly and try to sell them something, right? So yeah, pronunciation is still an issue, but the touch of having that phonetic language has been a huge improvement. But it still feels like there's a bit of a squeeze there that we can still get.
Okay, very cool. How about the turn taking? How does it work for you
Oh,
guys?
good old turn taking. Is it a prompt problem? Is it an infra problem? It's an all problem. I feel like we've had some really really awesome improvements in just the last like 4 to 6 weeks, um, uh, which I actually has which has actually been really helpful for us in terms of beyond that latency piece where I said, once the latency is solved, waiting for the turn is also equally as important, waiting for the user to finish. And there's a difference between detection and inferring when the turn is done. And the inference piece we've noticed works a lot better. However, it subjects the system to some really interesting some new like behavior that we just haven't seen before. Whether that's around the order a race condition with the tool calls or something of the sort. We noticed that when it comes to the turn taking, just because we get the inference okay. Like it actually introduces some interesting variability and other challenges and bugs that we're starting to see. I don't think it's fully solved yet, but it feels like it's damn well close. It's like we're damn well close there. And I think what Pipecat's pushed out with their open
Wow,
source model
interesting.
has also been super promising, which is what we lean
Yeah,
into.
yeah. From what I see, yeah, from what I see, turn taking, everyone is complaining on the turn taking side, um, and that's you know there is a long path to solve it. Actually, in my opinion, given it's such a hard problem, right? It has to do with the audio itself, right? Like there are a lot of cues in the audio itself, right? Your emotion, uh, like um, like pitch, intonation, the poses you make, um, and then there is a text component to it. Obviously, what you say. Uh, And I haven't seen like models. I know the Smarter and LiveKit, I think, has something, and OpenAI has announced a semantic VAD in their latest API. But from what I hear, we are not there yet, unless that you guys are doing something like specific for your use case. But yeah, like we are at Chris, we are very curious about this particular problem.
Yeah, I think it's one thing it's one thing to know like when we're having a conversation. It's one thing to know when your turn is over. It's another thing to know when I should respond. Like if
So
you
like
tell me
channeling, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I'm very excited about this particular problem. We are doing some things. Maybe we'll come up with some solutions there. But yeah, okay. So that's like so it seems like you had to reverse engineer conversation. Like what is conversation? What is good conversation? And can you share your thoughts on like how you're thinking about this? Like this is probably like beyond like academia or like linguistics, right? This is the first time engineers are like sort of reverse engineering conversation end to end because we need to optimize every part of it. Like what was that journey for you?
That journey for me started realizing we are terrible at speaking. Humans are just not good at chatting. And the funny consequence is that we rely on that heavily. Like we really depend on the imperfections of speech to to feel authenticity. If you're talking to someone that just actually is giving you the prosody and the cadence of a TEDx talk, right? That doesn't feel like a good conversation. It still feels very one sided, like you're being spoken to, as opposed to having a conversation with some close friend you might have back home who might not have the best syntax or diction and not good grammar, but is damn good at listening and really good at responding. I feel like an interesting. It's it's blossomed into this really beautiful problem of like, well, what is good conversation? And we know that being spoken to is not good conversation. We know that responding right away is actually also not good conversation. So what is it? And we think there's a huge uh, we all know there's a huge amount of like emotional data that just is just complete yield loss that we don't get through the model. I feel like what we've seen with Sesame has been pretty damn awesome in terms of getting emotional embeddings intertwined with the text as well with their like that like transformer architecture that they have, but it's a step in a direction. It's just sadly not still at the point where everyone can use it. And I understand they're a startup too. They got to make money and figure out what they're going to sell. But it's a damn good teaser. And I think there's so much emotional data that we just, like you mentioned earlier, it's like we just do not know how to. We don't have it just yet, and there's a lot to be done there, and it's super exciting. I think the pieces I'm really I haven't experimented with, but I've heard some interesting data on is giving like some type of emotional tagging and then giving that into the TTS step to be able to see what kind of response it gives you and being able to actually test that. But we don't actually have the evals in place to be able to properly quantify that at scale.
And from phone agent perspective for the use cases that you guys have, right? The sales rep, how important is the emotional part? Uh,
Um,
do you see it actually hurts uh, like the quality of the calls or the close
it's
rate?
yeah, it's a good question. I think the
Is it nice to have for that use case, or is it like a really high pain or must have?
it's a bit must to have given the array of customers that we have. We have a pretty wide range from like healthcare to just straight to like reaching out to restaurants and things like that. And these entities, like it's a different empathy pattern that you need when we're selling out to say medical practices. The agent needs to be able to understand that, oh, this other person's feeling very rushed. They're like rushing me through the phone call. I better just be quick. Then I want to empathize with the situation and value their time as much as possible. Versus oh, this other small business actually has time. They're in office. They're not like surrounded by a bunch of noise. Like they have the time to have a conversation. Let me try to connect with this person as much as possible. Those things I think are the I think really big pieces that we're missing in terms of improving the sales process, because typically for any sales process there's just a huge bit of empathy. If you look at like what a customer will one of our customers will like hand us in terms of like sales scripts, like these are the scripts we thought work well. There'll always be a lot of like little bits saying how to navigate a conversation based on the end user's either response or reactions and things like that. So one, it's expected by our customers, and then two, we actually don't have a way of embedding that yet into our call pipeline.
Yeah, there are TTS systems. I was actually interviewing the founder of Hume AI, right? I don't know them. So and their system it's a promptable TTS, right? Like large speech model, right? LSM. So you can prompt how to generate it, like synthesize the speech. And I think like for those situations, like as the agent sort of learns what's needed, how it needs to adjust, probably systems like this will be like applicable. I think OpenAI also has that. Like you can put a prompt like speak in this way, speak faster, speak like with this emotion. So that's it would be like super interesting to see how those things are getting integrated to the phone agent. Uh, okay, so that's like the TTS part. Any other challenges on the tech side that is like top of your mind when it comes to like scale or just like the quality of the conversations, right?
Yeah, I think besides the whole like emotional tagging or emotional influence here, something we're experimenting with is actually breaking up a single agent in a phone call into multiple agents that specialize at certain tasks. That's something we are experimenting with, that we are a little excited for, to be honest, because we have found that there are certain pockets of the conversation that, when just like really specialized for that bit, it just works. They just works so much better. And goes a little bit beyond, I think, just like the context of the conversation. Um, and that's something I think that we're still figuring out what exactly we want to do with that, because we do think that the future is going to be some type of like handoff meshing of some sort with several agents, not just in backend systems, but potentially in phone calls as well. Another big piece what we want to understand is um, is the whole self learning loop here. Uh, we want to be. I'm sure like every voice AI startup's got their it's got their tag on their website, something about self learning. But the reality is like that's something we still haven't, I think, fully cracked just yet. But I do think that there's some really really interesting components there, because one, every conversation is so damn different, and you don't have you can't have development go at the speed of one phone call. Like that's just unacceptable. That's too slow. So the question is like, how do we 10x that, and then after that 100x that? And there's no way it's a singular review process. It's something that's doing a some type of loop that is improving the conversation, and maybe it's at the human intervention step where it either approves or rejects the changes going into it.
Yeah. And also like how do you scale that human in the loop process, right? Given that you have scaled the AI part, but how do you match the human part to it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Like, Francisco, but I'm just curious. Like you said, like multiple agents in a single call. Like, okay, what does it mean? Is it like the same agent, like just adjusting to the conversation as it happens, or like more like multiple agents in the same conversation?
I think of multiple agents in the conversation depending on the complexity of it. If it's like a 15-20 minute conversation, I think typically like the frontier models that can do the 128K context that don't have issues with it. So if you start to lean into something a little bit more specialized and a little bit more local, um, we're trying to get, everyone's trying to get close to edge inference as much as possible. The question for us was we started just rethinking, does it make sense to have one agent do it all, or should we figure out if it's valuable to have some type of mesh, um, just like you would it with certain like multiplexing meshes, and like routers and stuff like that. It's like you have one multiplex that does something, and then it specializes in just that piece, and then it transfers over to another step to handle the next responsibility. And I think that's kind of the hypothesis that we're trying to understand. Is we suspect it'll be better. The question is, one, can we scale with it, and then two, is it going to be fruitful for our customers?
Very cool. Thanks. Look, I I'm pretty sure like at some point the technology is gonna get to the level that uh, like when you talk to AI, you don't know if it's a human or AI. So like let's call it a Turing test, right? And when you look at that state, do you think it's far? Like how far is it? Like when Um, like, cause like I've seen agents that are quite impressive today in terms of their latency, but then like they say something like there is no way this is a human, right? It's like
It's funny. I relate with these agents sometimes because I grew up speaking Spanish. That was my first language, and now that I've just like mostly English, I go back home sometimes to visit my family, and then it's they say it seems like you know Spanish, and then you say something that's just like, what was that? Uh, and so, in some regards, I'm failing my own Turing test here, but I don't know. I don't think I have a strong answer just yet. I agree that we're trending in that direction. I think the question is, if I break down the question a little more, I ask, what data and conversations are we not taking into consideration to provide the best output slash response? And I think when I break down the question like that, I get the feeling that as we double down on understanding a little bit more on the empathy side, it's not going to be as simple as a like four things that you look for in like tone and pitch, et cetera. I get the feeling that it's going to blossom a bit more recursively. And I think, like I said, Sesame's model did a really good job at doing this more of a recursive bloom of trees to be able to encode as much data as possible. But I do think that as we continue to do that, we're going to uncover new items that I'm not exactly sure, like what that'll be.
yeah, very cool. Well, Francisco, I think this was very cool conversation. I hope you guys nail this experience, and we keep hearing. We stumble upon real AI agents speaking on the phone soon. I'm very curious to speak and then get impressed, really, right? So thanks so much for coming and sharing your insights here.
Thanks a lot, David. Excited to see this come out.
Very cool. Thank you, man.